I can't comment about the technicalities of that, but I certainly hope that that the council is doing due diligence to ensure that we don't get into that situation, because actually these are vital council services that we're dealing with. I did want to comment on the commercial confidentiality and actually ask a question of Councillor Cornelius about, can you guarantee that ordinary ward councillors won't be hamstrung by the issue of commercial confidentiality, either in the scrutiny pre-contract or actually scrutinising the performance of the value for money on behalf of their residents after those contracts are let?
Alison, that's a brilliant question, because there's no way that I can answer that without knowing the specific details of the confidentiality that will be involved. It's a great
I put you on notice, I should be asking that to the scrutiny committee.
Thank you.
I wanted to come back to Councillor Mitra's point about councillors' access to information. And if you remember, it's a long time ago now, when I made my opening remarks, I said one Barnet just hasn't happened out of the blue. And that the rights of councillors, I have to say that the Labour government have been diluted. Before the cabinet system, we had the committee system. And I can tell you, because I've done it, if you were a member of a committee, you had a right to see every single paper on which you were being asked to make a decision. Not only that, any paper that related to the work of that committee, even to the extent that it's a landmark decision, it's called House of Lords O against O, because I have been to the Court of Appeal against Barnet. Even a councillor could look at a social worker's file if they're on the social services committee. All that was done away with when we introduced the cabinet system, and there is a grey area now about whether backbench councillors actually sit on committees, whether committees exist. If there is a committee system, the councillor who sits on that committee can have access to any paper that they wish to see if they're on the committee. If they're not on the committee, they have some rights, but not many more rights than a member of the public. So again, it's the political system that has gradually eroded the powers of your elected councillors. And it's my belief is that this is why we're here today, and this is why we're in a situation where somebody said, what can we do about it? And unfortunately, whatever political party is in control, if they have the majority, and they are prepared to accept the whip and follow their party's whip, whatever the debate is, they put their hands up, they have the majority, and it will go through.
Question for Jack: will you vote for a return of the committee system?
The answer to that is yes.
Questions from the floor? Eric Fishman, then Bob Jacobson, and then this gentleman here.
Yeah, sorry, me again. Upon taking over the parking enforcement contract, NSL Limited terminated the employment of all the former Barnet Council back office employees and moved 25 jobs to Croydon. And they're paying the new staff that they've employed from Croydon less money, and NSL get half the difference for the next 5 years. How does having 25 fewer people in work in Barnet help the businesses of Barnet to thrive?
Yes. Councillor Cornelius, you have told me personally that you believe that the unlimited power that the cabinet system gives to you, the leader, is absurd, and that you were possibly looking forward to returning to the committee system. I know that you can do that. Have you plans to do it? If so, when?
Now, yes, just before that, this answer to this gentleman, and then all the answers to this.
My name is Tony Solomons. I've been very impressed by the contribution of the only non-political member of the panel. it strikes me that it might be extremely helpful if a fairly urgent seminar was set up for the Tory councillors, at which Mr. Mann could give them, I mean, what's it, one insult more or less, give them the benefit of his experience and give them a few home truths.
Can I answer the committee's question first? Yes, I would be keen to return to the committee system. Yes. I think that, yes, can I have the same commitment from Alison Moore?
I have an interesting challenge. I have really only served as a councillor, unlike Jack, under the cabinet scrutiny system. And actually, when scrutiny is working well, I think it's great. But I think there is clearly a sea change in Barnet that is working towards being in favour of the committee system. But I guess I reiterate what I've said about each of the other things. I'm an evidence-based person, and I want to see the arguments for both and have that discussion. Because it would be utterly disingenuous of me to demand that in the case of the one Barnet, and then not demand that in terms of comparison between committee and cabinet. But certainly it is becoming very clear that people across Barnet are favouring the committee system.
Support it then. Come on, Alison, support it.
As regards the lost jobs, yes, that's sad, and I regret that, but that does happen, and we are part of a larger economy than just Barnet, and we do have to recognise that. People who live in Croydon are not living on the moon, they are part of the same London, well, they are, but it's part of the same London economy in which we live.
I mean, I'm not going to comment on the committee system, apart from to say that if you do reintroduce the committee system, that won't make very much difference in terms of the ability of councillors to scrutinise the inputs into how we put forward the contract. It rather misses the point. The issue is commercial confidentiality, not the right to view papers. And everything that was said is correct. It certainly was a correct statement of how the law works. But it won't help you in terms of having access to confidential information because it's confidential. That's the whole point. It's commercially confidential. It won't have anything to do with the council, how the contractor delivers the service, how they employ their staff, how they make their work. That won't be anything to do with the council. There won't be anything there. They won't have access to that sort of information. Just quickly on this seminar, I understand actually that there is a seminar planned for next week. That all the councillors, I think, have been invited to, and I've been asked to go along to that event. It's on the 14th of
Why aren't you
November.
walking it? What do you mean go along to it?
Sorry, I'll be, yes, all right, I think I'll be speaking at that event, yes.
But I would also point out there have been a number of occasions over the last 18 months when Andy, along with other people, have spoken at sessions that were open to all councillors. And the point of them was actually to inform the wider generality of councillors about the background and not just the details of what's happening in Barnet, because we don't know that at the moment, but actually how it's worked in other places, what the details are, so that we can start to build that evidence base to make those proper judgments. And in fact, I requested precisely that sort of evidence to be taken at the Budget and Performance Committee, but it was refused. And therefore, actually, those councillors who will be exacting pre-decision scrutiny and challenge on the proposals when they come forward will be ill-equipped to do that, or not as well-equipped as they would be to be able to do that. And that was precisely the question I asked, that we had external specialists talking about how those projects had worked or failed elsewhere, so that we were in a better position to ask the right questions on your behalf.
Limited time, we have two more main questions, and then if we have any time left after the closing statements, there will be a chance for people to ask. But this next question is from Philip Fletcher.
Okay. Phil Fletcher, Barnet Green Party. With one Barnet negotiations being carried out in secret due to commercial sensitivity, and contracts lasting 10 years, i.e. 2.5 legislative periods, Will this mean the death of local democracy as we know it?
Well, I think I've been making that point all evening about the accountability of elected councillors. Once these contracts are signed and fixed for 10 years, it's going to be interesting what platform all the political parties are going to approach the 2014 local elections. And I think I can't emphasise enough that I still hope that the Conservative group will pull back from making this decision and will take into account the strong feelings we've heard this evening. This is democracy in action tonight. And if they're not going to listen to you tonight, when are they going to listen to you?
The councillors and the democratic representatives will have exactly the same power over setting the outcomes and the delivery of services that they do now. What they will have is a contractor providing those services instead of directly employed staff.
Please let the speakers speak.
I hope this is not the death of local democracy, because all councillors stand for election genuinely to improve, to serve their local residents, whatever the party, to serve their local residents and try to improve things within the local authority that they serve. I think we are all concerned that our ability to do that in particular areas of the council is going to be significantly reduced and fettered by the decisions. I hope we draw back from them. I can assure you that we will continue to fight in every way we possibly can to serve you, but in these particular service areas we are going to have some challenges in doing that. And, we are going to have to fight to retain every bit of democratic accountability within those services.
Well, I mean, it just seems fairly obvious to me that if you sign a contract for 10 years, then you are stuck with the terms of that contract for 10 years. There is no ability to change the outcomes that are specified in the contract during that 10 years. That's not going to be possible. It will not be possible to stand for election on a manifesto that says if we're elected we're going to end this contract or we're going to fundamentally change this contract. It would cost the council a fortune if you tried to do that. The council will be contractually committed just as the contractor is contractually committed, and neither of them will have the ability to change that. There will be change mechanisms in the contract, but they will not operate as advice to the council. If you want to change something, it will cost you, and it will cost you dear.
I suppose the only thing to add to that is actually commercial companies are in it for shareholders, and the truth is that they are honour bound by law to serve those shareholders, and actually when it comes to the crunch they have to do that.
Okay, this gentleman here, that lady there, and somebody in the back there.
Councillor Collins, my name is Mohammed. I used to work for Barnet Council Department. When doing privatisation, we were advised by our senior managers that NSL will come and provide a better service to the community. We all disagree regarding that. One of the questions we asked to the NSL as well as to the senior managers is what experience does NSL have with regard to deal with parking from start to end? Because having looked at other boroughs, they only either have privatised their enforcement and all back office are built up by council. If you look at the historic things during that period, we asked for in-house bidding because we know we can provide better service. And one of the things is we've lost lots of staff due to restructure, but yet we still provide a better service, a better. But now, if you look at with NSL having taken 6 months, they haven't found any service better. Customers are complaining, residents are complaining because of the service they provide. I've asked one of the NSL enforcement and I asked, what do you think about NSL? They told me that it's like working for a devil company. Now, the other question I need to ask, why go for a contract for 10 years? Because why go contract for 10 years? If anybody goes to employment, they've been told in the contract, you've got 6 month probation period. Yeah, during 6 months, if you perform, you keep the job. If you don't perform, you're out of the job. Why does council like do a probation period for these companies?
Good evening, Richard. I've come here this evening with an open mind, and I'm not against privatisation per se generally. We've got some fantastic brains in the room. I'm really alarmed what I've heard tonight. Your arguments don't stack up. You've got some fantastic brains over there, John Dix. Can you not work with these people and see if we can abandon this mad privatisation scheme which is going to bankrupt our borough?
Absolutely.
There's a man back, and then there was somebody over here.
One's not enough.
The man over there. We're not the man over here.
Hi. Yeah, Nick Dimitrius, High Barnet resident. Councillors struggle to get information from the council. Subject access requests legally, companies do not have to divulge all information, and they take 40 days, that's not even a month, 6 weeks in fact. When do we get in time to oppose any changes in 6 weeks when you've got to sign contracts in 2? I'd like to know that.
Sorry, my name's David Longstaff. I just wanted to answer, I think, Bob's question when you said there weren't any Conservatives here. I just want to say I was actually asked to be on the panel and accepted.
That's not what I asked.
Well, you said there weren't any here, and there are.
No, I said there are no Conservatives that I know that have changed their minds about what Barnet. But right.
Well, then I apologise, but
indeed.
Well, I thought you said no Conservative councillors.
Change your mind, then you'll be two.
I'll have a chance. Can I just say, as Richard Cornelius has quite rightly said, we haven't seen the final bids yet, so one is waiting until we get condensed.
Keep your mind open till then.
I go with the gentleman who is the parking service.
Speak up, speak up.
There are complaints about the parking service. There were complaints about it before as well. I mean, that's nothing new. It goes with the territory. It's difficult negotiating with people when they don't want to be ticketed. You know, this happens. However, the service is generating savings now for the council and for the taxpayers. Absolutely it is. And I have confidence that we will make the right decision when we come to look at these contracts in a couple of weeks' time.
You have one brief comeback. There's a lady in the back who wants to ask.
The thing is, you said the council is doing savings. What savings is it doing when every case that is going to pass, the council is losing nearly about £50 for each cases, and NSL are not even submitting the cases. If you look at the NSL the Platinum's website, you can see how many cases that Barnet lost because they have not submitted cases, or because people, when motorists go to their make bills, park and traffic bill service, NSL are not submitting these cases. And each case that goes there, whether it's withdrawn, lost, or do not contest, the council is costing £50 a case. So where is the saving coming from?
Okay, there's a lady right with that.
Can I just say, I have nothing to do with the council. I'm not employed by the council. I'm not supporting anything. I have never heard such a shambles in my life. There was a contract coming up that nobody's seen, nobody's going to see. Who's going to scrutinise it? How long do they have to scrutinise it?
Yeah.
It's been absolute nonsense. You could not work in business like that. I worked in television for many years, and you always knew what you were contracting. You always knew what you were buying. You always were able to sit across a table and talk to people about what they were going to provide. This sounds to me like the biggest shambles run by a shower of incompetence.
just got a question for Richard. He used as his justification for the 10-year contract that the companies have to buy computer systems, implement systems. Now, he has a point, because if a company is going to put an investment in, then they will need a long contract. Prior to the last election, the Conservatives slated the Labour government, and they said in all the time of all of the outsourced contracts, there was only one that had been implemented successfully, and that was the post office cardholder account system. And that's how the benefits are delivered to 3 or 4 million people every single week. And that was delivered on time, and it was delivered under budget, and it has been very successful, because as far as I know, everyone gets their benefits paid via it. And that was to the post office. Now, that contract was re-led 2 years ago, and they had to completely re-equip. There are, I think there's 40,000 terminals in various post offices across the country, and that was re-led, and the period of that contract, with all those terminals, with all the equipment, with everything, it's a huge contract. It's far bigger than anything Barnet's got, and it requires far bigger IT systems, and they're far more complicated, and to change it would take far longer. And that was let for 5 years. So saying that a 10-year contract is necessary, basically, what you said about the technology in your reply to Jack, even mainframe computer systems, there's about a 4 or 5 year life cycle for any operating system on any mainframe. In 10 years' time, if all the systems they brought out will be at least 5 years out of date. And so using that as an argument, if that's what they're telling you, is complete and utter rubbish, and you want to challenge them on it.
Main question from Dario Lopez. Dario here.
It's John Parker again. It seems a long time ago when I asked my question, and I realise that Councillor Cornelius and I are not getting any younger. And it may be that I've been sleeping through part of the meeting, but I haven't heard a single thing that would excite my mind as to how I, as a resident and other residents, might benefit from these proposed changes. That was the question. I haven't heard a single thing.
Well, the answer is, if there is £100 million saving over 10 years, then that will be a big success for wait until you see the contract details, and then you will be able to decide yourself. The taxpayer cannot do this. No, the taxpayer will decide. I mean, ultimately, the taxpayer. We will decide, because we are the elected representatives. If you set a question for a referendum, do you want an increase in council tax to avoid this? I do not believe people will vote. We're elected representatives, and we should make the decision.
Okay, I can see it's getting a little bit fractious. I'm being told to wrap it up because we only have the room for so long. Now, each of the 4 panelists has 2 minutes by the clock to make a closing statement, and then we have several agreed closing statements from the floor that I hope will be equally succinct. 2 minutes.
I will be particularly succinct. I believe that these 2 contracts will lead to big savings for the taxpayer in Barnet, and I believe these are the future for Barnet, and I look forward to seeing the details and making the decision in the next 2 weeks.
Say bye-bye.
Well, Councillor Cornelius says he believes that these contracts will lead to big savings when he sees the contracts. So how does he know?
You get the question of the night award.
And the truth is, we don't. There are no net savings so far in One Barnet. There has been a lot of rhetoric around the double counting. But a greater and greater number of people are concerned about the reality of One Barnet as it emerges, and concerns about similar projects in other councils. Residents tonight in this room have demonstrated that they are passionate about their council, their community and their council services, and I think that really is democracy in action. Outsourcing and privatising 70% of core services does feel like taking the heart out of our council. What's more, it's a huge risk. £1 billion worth of taxpayers' money is at stake. It's not too late to draw back, even at this 11th hour. We don't know what's in the contract yet, but we will be scrutinising it till it squeaks. But actually, these are your services. What you want is good value, responsive services that are secure and value for money. And I think we ought to be able to work together across the council to deliver those for you, rather than excluding the vast majority of councillors and democratic accountability in letting these contracts.
Okay, some really quick key points. First of all, the track record of this council in terms of contract procurement and contract management does not fill you with confidence that actually it will deliver the £100 million savings that Councillor Cornelius has been talking about. But in any event, even if you did deliver a £100 million saving over 10 years, and you could have delivered £110 million savings by improving in-house services, why the outsourcing solution is preferable. And unless you have developed a meaningful public sector comparator, you can't know whether that £100 million saving could have been better had you simply kept the services in-house. But the big point about this is that there is no other council in the country which is going to these lengths to let contracts of this size, to manage them in this way. It's not a choice that other people are making. And it's the risk involved in that. It's the risk involved in doing something that's not proven, that nobody else has done, with one of the poorest track records of managing this sort of thing than any council, anywhere. And it's this £1 billion gamble that everybody here has been talking about. That's what it is. It is a gamble. And I think the council needs to question whether it is really worth taking that gamble in a situation as it is. You know, the financial crisis is not what people, I think, have been led to believe. There's pressure, it's not crisis, and I don't think it warrants this level of council.
We have 3 people who are going to make a final statement. Poppy has promised me hers will be under 2 minutes. Poppy still here? Yeah. Have I got a microphone?
I'm grateful for your time because it's so hot and it's so late. I wanted to make 2 important but broad points, but given how late it is, I shall make only one. And that is that the elephant in this room is austerity. And all the 3 parties on this platform subscribe to austerity. None of them has stood up, as the Greens have done, and said if we close the tax loopholes so that corporations and the super rich pay their taxes, if we cancel Trident, and if we impose a Robin Hood tax, none of these cuts would be necessary and the right people would be paying for this austerity. And that's the one point I will make.
Thank you, Chair. I thought we'd missed a little me.
Oh.
I know. One Barnet is probably the most opposed policy ever to be inflicted on the London Borough of Barnet residents. Residents have shown their objections in so many ways, including more than 4,200 signatures asking for a referendum.
Yes. Yes.
Several well-attended public meetings. A number of strikes from people that don't strike. a motion in council asking for a referendum, a motion of no confidence in yourself, the leader, and your colleagues on the cabinet, letters and articles and editorials criticising, taking to pieces in the same forensic way that we've had it this evening. They've taken this policy together, and you yourself have said you haven't even seen the papers, and yet you're promoting the idea, which is incredible. Frankly, there is no businessman, including yourself, that would ever promote an idea without reading the paper. My question, Councillor. There is a question. What the hell do we have to do more than what we've already done? And please tell us, constitutionally, or if anybody else constitutionally, because I promise we'll do it, apart from putting our hands in our pockets for £100,000 to take you to judicial review, but I don't even score that out. But what else can we do to get you to scrap these proposals? They have no friends except for your cabinet, who insists that your colleagues, your Conservative colleagues, vote for them. They have no friends. Think about it, and think about what's going to happen at the next election.
My name is Julian Sills. I'm one of the people that at the beginning tried to start the Barnet Alliance for Public Services. Public services are something that belongs to democratic local government. In the time when it was left to private enterprise, in the Victorian times, that was the age of the cholera, people dying in the streets, the age of the workhouse. That's what happens if you leave it to private industry. It was private enterprise. It was provided by the public sector. No, not until they had. Well, I'm not going to go to the history lesson now. It wasn't until the LCC was founded that they were able to clean the water up. And it was councils, unfortunately, when private enterprise was unable to provide people with the homes that they needed, the municipal housing came in. When they were unable to provide for their pensions and for looking after people in their old age, it was public services. What for the democratic local government is a protection against the chaos that reigns in the world today. One Barnet actually, as a matter of fact, one Barnet is a little example of the whole world, the way the world runs. You don't have any control over what gets produced, how much it's sold for, how many people get laid off, or how many countries go down. What this one Barnet is not so much a public service to the community, but a public service to the corporations. One of the last steps in democratic local accountability, that already the powers and the finances available to local authorities have been cut down by successive governments. And meanwhile, all the public services that make a lot of money, there are public services that make a lot of money at this moment. The power industry, the electricity and the gas, and the water companies and the banks, they were public services. They used to belong to the public. A huge transfer from our property to the property of the corporation. I'll end up by saying there is an alternative. We're always told, but there isn't the money, we haven't got any money. Really? No money? How is it that the Sunday Times tells us the 1,000 richest people in Britain got £414 billion between them? That means to say every morning they wake up £50 million richer. for nothing. That's their assets. That's what they want to put in the bank. Every day, 24 hours, 24/7, the foreign exchange markets are going in the city of London, and up to £2 trillion changes hands overnight. That's to say 2,000 million pounds. There's plenty of money. Now you're going to say, yes, but we haven't got it, we can't get it. There are things that local government can do right now. First of all, return us. You have to have a strategy. You can't go around like an ant saying the crisis has hit us now. The person that prevented this scheme that we actually had a representative of BT, you may remember, who stood in the council as well. He was serving BT and the council at the same time. He said, never waste a good crisis. They're using the crisis to make us pay for it. I say, have a strategy now for taking back into municipal ownership the public services that will be making money for us.
Finish up.
Thank everybody for coming, all the panelists, all of you in the audience who have stayed to the end. I will reiterate that if you haven't had your question answered, please send it to the council, to the individual councillors. You've heard what they've had to say. Make up your own mind.